Okay, I'm up here at a lake house, and this is a total redo. In other words, this bathroom has been torn apart and reconfigured into the way the customer wanted it to be. So everything is basically new here, all the new sheetrock and a new shower, which I think is larger than the original one was. Anyway, this is one of the unusual situations where not only am I not doing a tear out, but I'm not doing the prep either. Apparently the customer and or some friends of the customer had done the prep. So what they used here on the floor was HardieBacker, which I'm not necessarily opposed to. They use these screws, drywall screws, for the HardieBacker, which I don't do. I usually use roofing nails, which is appropriate. And so the screw heads are kind of sticking out a little bit. My thin set will be such that that shouldn't be an issue, but the reason I use nails is because they're always flush with any board that I put down. The tile that's going to go on this floor is a travertine. It's an 18 by 18 polished travertine. So this will go on this floor diagonal, and it will run diagonal up to the shower and up through here and into the closet area. Well, it will stop right before the closet. Good sized closet too, I like that. So that's where that 18 will go. Getting into the shower, and before I talk about the tile that's going in here, let me talk about the prep. Some of the prep here that was done was a little unnecessary, and I don't have a problem with people doing their own prep. The prep is long as it's done right, I don't have an issue with it. Sheetrock guy came in here and sheetrock did a corner bead because that's what sheetrock guys do. Corner bead on a shower, not necessary, because normally the trim goes on the outside, and when you do a corner bead, you don't get a flat surface. If you notice, you know, you have this sheetrock mud that, because there's not a corner bead in here, you don't have a flat surface to deal with. So I would not have done a corner bead there, nor would I have done it on this side of the knee wall. It's kind of unnecessary, and it just causes some issues for me, which is not a huge deal, but you know, it's still, I'm just saying. I don't know what they used on here. Let me see what size this is. I think this is 1/2 inch Hardie. So I'm assuming that they put HardieBacker on the top of the curb, which I used 1/2 inch Durarock. Again, I'm not opposed to the HardieBacker, but again, you know, they're putting screws in the top of this. I'm assuming also that the shower pan originally was wrapped around the curb. I don't know that to be true. Once the shower pan is done, then I usually put Durarock on the outside, inside, and the top, and then I'll screw it down, and yes, it goes into the shower pan liner. However, what I normally do is, after I've done that, is I butter the top of the curb and the side and the front. And so when I butter it, I use thin set, butter it all the way around. Then I put Red Guard over that after it's dried. And in this case, they didn't do the buttering part, they just put the Red Guard right on top, which is okay. I'm, you know, not opposed to that. I just go a little bit overkill with the way that I prep it. Getting into the shower area, the pan was poured. Well, it wasn't poured, it was just, I was going to say it was poured sloppy. Well, it wasn't really poured sloppy, it just wasn't manipulated correctly. If you notice, this has little dips here. It's got a huge dip in the back over here. You can see that. I don't like that at all. When I pour a pan and I manipulate it down to the drain, it's nice and smooth, and it's even from left to right on both back and front. And so this is just kind of poorly manipulated. In fact, it's kind of soft too. I'm imagining this pan was pretty wet when it was poured. So anytime you have the pan material that's kind of soft like this is, it just means there was a saturation of too much water. In other words, this was really the sand topping mix is what this is. Had too much water in it, is what I'm getting at basically. And so what that does is it degrades the strength of the topping mix. Plus it makes it difficult with these dips and everything to get a nice even flow with the tile. So that's something I'm going to have to deal with also. It's really high up here, and the back here where the bench is at, it's not so high. There's definite slope, but the slope is more profound up there than it is back here. So I don't really like that either, but I'll just deal with it. What I'll do is I'll put in an extra thin set in order to take up the discrepancy. The biggest deal about this is, and again, I don't know who did the prep, but if you notice, all the wall board is inside of the pan. And this is a common mistake even with experienced tilers, and I always scratch my head and try and figure out what they're thinking about when they do this. So in other words, the wall board goes up first after the pan liner. Again, I don't know this to be true, but the pan liner should be at least 2 or 3, 4 inches above where we're at right here. So the pan liner, if you can imagine, is in the back of the studs, and then they put the board on. The pan liner is already set, so it's literally flush with the bottom of the pan, right? And then they poured this material. So in other words, now your wall board is embedded into the pan, which means if water ever penetrates through the tile and into the pan, which almost always happens eventually unless it's sealed real well, the tile is sealed real well, then that water will eventually saturate into the wall board and weep its way up. So you'll get mold and mildew issues not only into the wall board, but also potentially you'll have mold and mildew where tile meets the tile. So typically the mold and mildew will be all along the corner here, and then, you know, of course you'll bleach out and scrub off all that mold and mildew, and then a couple weeks later, a month later or whatever, it grows back again because, you know, you have all this saturation of water. And so having the wall board inside of the pan is never ever a good idea, and that's what they did. So it's not on me, you know, since I didn't do the prep. I can't take any responsibility for that. Another thing that they did here is that you see the mesh tape that's embedded in between everywhere the wall board is at. I mean, literally, there's mesh tape all along every seam, which is okay. I don't put the mesh tape personally. You know, I just fill in the cracks and the gaps is behind there, and then when I put my red guard on, it really doesn't affect anything. I mean, the red guard, the reason that tape is used, let me explain. The reason tape is used is because where you have a crack, you don't want that crack to transfer through. In other words, you don't want the separation going on of you know, the two pieces of wall board, right? The thing is, you won't have separation once you put on this red guard at least 2 or 3 coats. It's pliable, you know, red guard, stretches and everything. So this is not bad or good. It's just something that I personally feel is unnecessary to have this mesh tape all the way around here. Doesn't hurt anything, but there's a lot of it, a lot of work. And then they put it on the outside here too, which I don't really understand. And then the red guard is slopped on. The board's not even when they set this wall board. You know, there's a gap. See where my hand is at? There's a gap going on here. This one's lower, this one's higher. So a lot of this prep is not prepped well, which means I have to take up for that. This is even more profound. You see this board here and this board, definitely gap here. So the reason that matters to me is because when I'm setting my tile, everything has to be near perfect. And if I don't have a perfect prep, then I don't have a perfect tile job. One of the issues is when this tile is very thick. So when it runs up, we're trying to get flush with the window. And we're not going to be flush with the window because, you know, we're out too far. Over here, we're flush with the window, more or less, but it doesn't account for the thin set. And then over here, we're definitely not flush with the window. So that's the problem. that I run into. So what I'm probably going to do is I'll use, I'm going to be using some pencil tile in this shower. So I'll just run pencil up and around here, and the pencil is going to stick out further than the tile will, so that will rectify that situation. So getting back to the tile, we have, hold on a second, let me close this door. We have a carpenter in here making a lot of noise. We have two different tiles that's going to go on the wall. If you see here, there's a 12 by 12, 16 by 16 maybe, and then we have a 16 by 8. So we're going to use a 16 by 16. There'll be one row of that, and then the 16 by 8 will be vertical. So there'll be a row, a band if you will, going around on top of that, and then another row 16 by 16 on top of that, and then another band. At a certain point where we're eye level about the window is where this border will go. So here's the rope. The rope will go first, and then we're going to use about 5 inches, 6 inches of this mosaic tile, and then the rope will go on top of that. So the rope will also go on the top of here. We're going to stop at the where that ceiling seam is at. The rope will go there, and it will kind of be a border going all the way around. Not a border, but we'll kind of cap it off, so the rope will go for that. I'm trying to get the customer not to use the rope on the outside of here. I'd rather see a bull nose on the outside of here. So we'll see how that works. The bull nose should go all the way around this wall here, and then back up around this knee wall right here. The bull nose would be a lot better than the rope. So that's basically it. That's what I anticipate it looking like. And this is day one of probably about 4 days at the most. So I'm going to get started on this. The 2x2 will go on the shower floor, so that will go first, and then the field tile will go up after that. And you know, so I'm going to get started on this, and it'll look very sharp when it's done. Okay, this shower is done. Did the floor in 18 by 18 travertine all the way around, just like I said before. We get done, there's a transition strip right at the beginning and a transition strip here at the front. The aluminum ones I like. Carpet will go in there eventually, butt right up against that. And not quite grout. I'll finish grouting yet, but I'll be doing that tomorrow. So this is a finished product. This tile the customer had bought in 16 by 16, 8 by 16, and 24 by 16. There was a pattern on a sheet somewhere. So he wanted this pattern to be replicated onto the floor. The problem with replicating this onto the floor is that, relatively speaking, it's a small floor only because this knee wall and this wall is in the way, so it doesn't really make any sense to do that. So I suggested an 18 on the floor, which he agreed to on a diagonal. And then these tile actually got set on the shower, and I had just enough to do the shower. So if you'll notice, a 16 by 16 and then an 8 by 16. Again, 16 by 16, I used, incorporated the 24 to go around the window. And then above that, a 16 by 16 and the smaller 8 by 8 that also comes in that package. And then he wanted the rope, and this mosaic was actually on a 12 by 12 sheet, so we did 9 rows of that all the way around, with the rope on the top and the bottom, and then the rope on the very top again. And this is how it turned out. Not too bad. There's no pattern per se, but as I said, all the tile got used, so it's all good. 18 by 18 also went on the face of this bench and on the top of the bench, and of course the bench has a slope. He's going to come in later. He's got a granite guy that's going to actually put a seal top of this granite that's about 5.5 inches, that's going to go on top of here, down here, and on this wall, all the way from top to bottom, and also be the curb top. Curb top is also slanted inward, and so that'll all get set. And then on the edge of here, there's going to be eventually some wood trim molding that'll probably be 2 1/4 molding that'll go all the way down here where the bare wall is at, and including all the way up here where the bare wall is at. So the molding will look nice on there. It'll kind of finish it off. And that's about it. And this again was, let's see, today's Thursday, so this is a 4-day job to get this knocked out. Turned out pretty good, and I'm pleased with it, and I hope the customer is also. And I am out of here and back out and get to another job. So